Hi, it's another amazing Thursday morning right here in the city of Lagos. Good morning and welcome to the newspaper review segment on AM Cafe, coming to you from the studios of IATV. My name is Folashade Ogurinde. This morning we're taking a review of the front pages of the national dailies, and we're reviewing the Guardian newspaper, the National Guardian, the Guardian newspaper, the Nation, the Punch newspaper, and of course the Nigerian Tribune. And I'm not the only one in the studio this morning. I have with me Mr. Muka Popola. He's a journalist. How are you?
Fine. Folashade, how are you?
I'm very fine. We missed you last Thursday.
Well, I'm sorry about that. I also miss you.
All right, so let's move on now to the Guardian newspaper. We have this top story here which says fresh hurdles against minimum wage take off. NLC TUC threaten action over stalled negotiations. Experts task government on workers' salary and economy. That story is on the front page of the Guardian and continued on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. The Shiites has vowed to sustain protests till El-Zazaki wife regained freedom. That story is on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. Opera objections greets Amaechi's screening in Senate. That's on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. Tribunal dismisses PMB's elections petition against Buhari. That story is on page 7 of the Guardian newspaper. Moving on to other stories, we won't stop reprisals on killer headers Afenifere warns. Fulani has headsman should leave South Northern elders insist. And also ACF knocks Obasanjo over comments on insecurity. That story is on the front page and continued on page 9 of the Guardian newspaper. And that's all on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Mr. Muka, with regards to the NLC TUC threatening the federal government over stalled actions on negotiations about the new minimum wage. Now, the new minimum wage was signed by President Muhammadu Buhari a few months ago, and everyone kind of jubilated. But now we've seen issues and stallings with regards to implementation. According to the Guardian newspaper, it was said that following the signing of the new wage by President Muhammadu Buhari, which provided a legal framework for a new wage floor, further negotiation on the punch it packs for other salary levels, especially GL07 to GL17, has proved difficult. So according to this report by the Guardian newspaper, this seems to be the issue. Why do you think it's an issue for the federal government to implement this new minimum wage?
Why should it be an issue? In the first place, there was a very extensive negotiation, before they got to that stage. And why should negotiation continue after an agreement has been reached and the minimum wage bill has been passed? So it shows the insincerity you see on both sides. It may be insincerity on one side and then ignorance on the other side. So, but one way or the other, they must find a middle course, because they should not allow this to also degenerate into another crisis. We have so many things on our hands now, and we should not allow this one to get in the way of our economy and slow us down. I think that's exactly what should happen.
All right, you really made a valid point. I mean, before the signing by the president, they must have been 1 or 2 negotiations.
No,
and everything must have been ironed out. So why after the signing?
Extensive negotiation. So it shows that there was insincerity on one side and there was ignorance on the other side.
All right, thank you very much. Let's move on now to the Punch newspaper. The Punch is reporting with the story Afenifere Ohaneze Middle Belt attack ACF for protesting Fulani killer tag. Obasanjo has diminished his status as a statesman, says forum and allegations rubbish. Afenifere group supporting evil, says Middle Belt. That story is on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Above the masthead, drama as Senate screens to ministerial nominees. Buhari's list a mockery of anti-graft war, says Yakasi. That story is on page 8 and page 41 of the Punch newspaper. Mieti Allah disowns Fulani vigilantes in Ondo State. That story is on page 41. Ministers, lawmakers among 5 trillion naira chronic debtors, says AMCON. That story is on page 32 of the Punch newspaper. Federal government won't renew expired oil blocks licenses, NNPC boss says. And that story is on page 23 of the Punch newspaper. A story beside the masthead here says Boris Johnson replaces May as British Prime Minister. That story is on page 18. Magu laments delay in Diezani's UK fraud trial. That story is on page 3 of the Punch newspaper. Just below the picture here, it says EFCC seals Okorocha's College Supermarket Daughter School. That story is on page 18 of the Punch newspaper. We can see pictures of the said buildings that were closed down yesterday. Evans arms supplier apprehended in Delta State. That story is on page 4 and page 5. Moving on to other stories. 314 worship centers licensed to conduct weddings, says federal government. That story is on page 10 of the Punch newspaper. Coaches kill 2 friends, injure pregnant woman in Lagos. That's on page 5 of the Punch. American arrested for breaking key in airport workers' ear. That story is on page 41 of the Punch newspaper. Police arrived Lagos Ibadan Road after suspected headsmen abducted CMD's son, 2 others, says the driver. That story is on page 4 and page 5. And finally, on the front page of the Punch, FIRS generated 5.23 trillion naira in 4 years, says Fola. That story is on page 23 of the Punch newspaper. Without wasting much time, let's head now to the Nation newspaper. The Nation is reporting with this story: EFCC seals off Okorocha's assets, choice property for probe. That story is on page 7 of the Nation newspaper. Our aircraft fit, says Air Peace after incident had landing likely pilot's error. That's on page 8 of the Nation newspaper. The head story here says drama Senate screens Amechi memorial orders. Onu Akpabio Akume Ikeazo Oga Adegbite Adamu Nwajoba cleared. That's on the front page and continued on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Before I read up on other headline stories, I'd like Mr. Muke to comment on this. Now, when the list was released day before yesterday, there were lots of reactions here and there. Some people felt the list was okay, and some felt otherwise. What would you say? Do you think the president has done well with the collection of this ministerial list?
I think the reason some Nigerians were not really inspired is because of the long time, it took Mr. President to come with the list. And the only reason given, waiting for like 5 months since February that he was declared winner of the election, has been that, well, he wants to do it differently from that of 2015, know the people he wants to, pick and all that. And at the end of the day, when the list came out, they were really people that are not new to us. They are people that have been around, and then you began to wonder why was it taking Mr. President that long to know that he would need Amechi? 14 of his ministers were returned. Why did he have to take him 5 months to to make up his mind on that?
I think it was 2 months plus. Yeah.
No, it's not 2 months plus, because since February 23rd and maybe a day or 2 after that, he was declared winner of the election. He knew that he was going to have a new cabinet. So that's why but he was inaugurated. I think he won the election, but as at the time, according to... It doesn't really matter.
According to when the official... I'm talking about the official countdown.
You see, the thing is this. If it were a new person coming into office, then you will be thinking about even that person. Since the day that person was declared winner, you will know that he was going into that government with a cabinet. And then you don't just get there. It is the day you got there, then you started, looking for who to work with. So it will be wrong, we have seen presidents declare, their cabinet in less than 2 days.
And it was even reported yesterday that the list was just given to the Senate without the portfolio.
No, I do not think that is necessary. Because the Constitution, even when you talk about, sometimes I've been looking at it and I stopped getting excited about screening in the first place. What is the essence of the screening? If the Constitution or the portfolio that people are asking for, after the screening, and if the president sent, my name to Muka Ukpola will be Minister of Aviation, and maybe after that time he decided to change it to Minister of Works. The constitution has not said that he should go back to seek another approval. So what is the essence? Since he has unlimited, authority to change, his cabinet at any time, then asking for portfolio as they are entering doesn't have any meaning.
All right, so let's link it now to this story. Let me go back to the Punch newspaper. This story on page 32 says, ministers, lawmakers among 5 trillion naira chronic debtors, says AMCON. Why exactly should a minister be a part of the chronic debtors?
I read that story. The man is just telling us how so much people abuse power, in Nigeria, and they tend to they operate with criminal intent. They said that they will go to a bank, take loans without the intention, to repay. So, and at the end of the day, because of the loose laws that we have, such people will be in the society, use that law to contest election. They will find themselves in big positions, either in the National Assembly or becoming minister or chairman of big organizations, and they carry on as if they are above the society. But it said that they are limited, in powers. That the agency is now, AMCON is trying to work with other agencies, EFCC, ICPC, and even they are working on a documentary instrument to shame these people, that even if they are unable to recover the money, that they want to name them.
Because most definitely there's a budget for each ministry, so why should a minister still take loans to execute projects?
No. Those were loans taken for personal use.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. They were loans taken for not on behalf of government. They were loans taken, maybe they are for their private companies, personal use and all that, and they refuse to redeem, the payment.
All right, let's move on to other stories here on the front page of The Nation. CJN to fight graft. That's on front page and continued on page 6 of The Nation newspaper. ACF hits Obasanjo over letter to Buhari. You can find that on the front page and continued on page 7 of The Nation newspaper. Eagles searching for goalkeeper. Sports fans, you can check that out on the front page and on page 49 of The Nation newspaper. Without wasting much time, let's switch gears now to the Vanguard newspaper. With regards to presidential policy retreat, rejig security, keep off pension funds, Oshomole tells Buhari, says rate of poverty high, assures government will build on first-term successes as Obaseki Oshomole reunite at Aso Rock. My government has restored growth, curbed inhalation, says Buhari. That story is on the front page and page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Ministers, Senate goes back to bow and go, screens 8 more nominees today. Baribe, I would have made Akpabio sweat. Dixon backs silver. That story is on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper. Health and living, how drinking Zobo Kunu from used plastic bottles endangers health. That's on page 36 of the Vanguard newspaper. Insecurity, Afenifere demands timeline on restructuring. That's on page 11 of the Vanguard newspaper. U.S. travel ban on politicians' validation of electoral malpractices claim, says Atiku. That's on page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper. ACF to OBJ, you lack moral standing to criticize Buhari's handling of security. That was said by the ACF and on the page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper. Will assist executive arm battle corruption, CJN says, and that's on page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper. 30,000 naira minimum wage, save Nigeria from looming strike, Labour tells SGF. That story is on page 14 of the Vanguard newspaper. And I think that's all I have. Okay, with a business story here says recapitalization, insurers get that deadline to submit plan others. That story is on page 19 of the Vanguard newspaper. Okay, Mr. Moka, I want you to comment on this. Now, we were talking about the senatorial screening, and this story here says Senate goes back to bow and go, screens 8 more nominees today. Now, what exactly are the criteria to screen, a potential minister? with regards to, is it based on moral standing? Is it based on past, records? And why the bow and go? How does it used to be before compared to now, which, according to the Vanguard, is a bow and go issue now?
When we look at what is happening, at our Senate, you find that the thing has been reduced to a mere drama. Because if somebody will appear and just be asked to go, then you are not talking about the capability of that person to perform in any aspect of our national life. You just want to look at how handsome he is, how beautiful. You say, okay, oh yeah, you are good, you can go. So it then means that for Senate, it is just a mere appearance. Even the people that they ask questions, it is just for the sake, for all righteousness to be fulfilled. It doesn't have any cogent, reason for structuring, our governance direction. So because if that was the purpose, then there will be no need, just looking at somebody's face and say, okay, take a bow and go, without asking that person any question. So then even the people who are asking questions, what is the essence? So that's why I said that the thing has been reduced to a mere drama, and it then means that it will have been good, because when you even look at it deeper, if the Senate, gives approval, clears me for a ministerial appointment, and for whatever reason they feel that I no longer deserve to be in that government, and they call Mr. President, please sack the Minister of Aviation, and the man says no, there is nothing they can do. So all these, but just as you asked, the thing has become a drama, just ordinary, just national drama. Let them appear and we see their faces and they go.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Mukakupola. But beyond the bow and go, we really hope, all Nigerians are really hoping that the ministers who will be appointed finally, would do...
No, they've been appointed. We are just hoping that they will perform.
Exactly, perform and, really do what they ought to do there, because that's the major reason why they are put there in the very first place. Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Muka, for coming on the program. Yeah,
it's my pleasure for Ashadi. Thank you, our listeners. It's nice to be with you again.
All right. But that's all we can take on the newspaper review this morning. Join us again tomorrow. Over now to Ibadan for the rest of the show. Good morning.